you.
Are we live?
We're live. Sorry. I was like, that's the slowest head count I ever heard.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Digital Rebar Provision Meetup number 33. We're off to a rockin' start here. So for the keen-eyed of you, you'll notice that number 33 we tagged with our last meetup 2 weeks ago. Had a little bit of a fizzle out on that, so we decided to keep the number and most of the theme from previous meetup. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Rancher and do a live demo of deploying Rancher. We have a number of usability improvements through the UX portal, some base workflows, and we have a really cool new catalog capability for getting content and plugin stuff we're going to talk about. And then we're going to kick over to Bug Scrub, everybody's favorite topic, and try and get some of our issues sorted and cleaned up. And then we'll also do community discussion as we always do. We've got a great group of people on today from the Rack-End side. We've got Rob Hirschfeld, Greg Althaus, and Victor Lowther, myself, Shane Gibson, and we have a nice contingent in the community here. Some of our old-time favorites, Chris Trees, and some newbie Stan. Stan's around too. Woohoo! Welcome, Stan. It's been a while since I've seen you. And some new folks, Gabriel and Simon. So I think Simon, you might have been in on one or two previously, but I don't recall exactly. But welcome everybody, and we're going to kick off today with Rancher, and we'll kick the ball over to Greg Althaus, who's going to show us a little bit about the Rancher content workflow and fun stuff. Greg, all yours.
Okay. Let's see if I can share my screen here. Okay, everybody see the happiness?
Happiness.
So this is Rancher OS. We added a content pack. It's at the same kind of level as the Core OS content pack to give you the ability to install and run live Rancher images or install them to disk. So what comes with that? I'm using the current API. You'll see that there's a Core OS one, and then there's also now a Rancher OS one. This provides a couple of stages and boot environments, and the boot environments it provides are Rancher to disk and Rancher latest. These currently reference the Rancher 1.5 release. And pull from there. That means it explodes the ISO, so you would do a normal DRP CLI bootm's upload ISO, and it would fetch the ISO for you and explode it locally. That allows you to then have the kernel and image needed to actually run Rancher. And so there's some stages that go along with that for running and wiping disks, being able to run and provide Rancher OS in both a live install and a live running, kind of think of it as running Sledgehammer, an in-memory version. That's the Rancher Live. And then there's a Rancher install, which puts it on the local disk and then reboots and runs Rancher as if it were installed on the disks. Then you create some workflows, and I don't think we provide them. We do. We have some example live workflows for building the system that you can start with. So for example, wipe the disks, boot into Rancher Live, and then in this case, we even have some examples of building up a Rancher server that the nodes can then join so that you can use Rancher to manage Rancher OS to bring up Kubernetes. And so this is an example of running a Rancher server that you can then use and use the Rancher worker nodes to join that Rancher OS cluster. And it uses similar ideas as our Kubernetes cluster kind of parameters that you can specify a Rancher cluster to join, and then the system will join those up. But to give you an idea how this works, I have a system sitting here in Sledgehammer. I can tell it to become a live running rancher. In this case, it should, assuming there we go, power this one on. It will boot. In this case, I use Sledgehammer just so I can manipulate the disks. Rancher has, much like CoreOS, the ability to use the hard disks as a temporary storage for like Docker container images and stuff like that. And so the formatting of the disks makes sure that that becomes usable by the live OS system. Then in this case, I have my kexec variables turned on so that instead of having to reboot, I can just kexec directly into Rancher OS so I can avoid all the reboot time. So this is just Sledgehammer booting, followed by shortly the disk being wiped, and then it should transition into Rancher OS. That's kind of what we provided. So, any questions?
Yeah, so how about, you said you currently are building on 1.5.0. Do we have the ability to parameterize the version? Have we added that?
No, that's actually an interesting feature request that I was thinking about in all sorts of contexts. Currently, bootims are not parameterizable in that way. Okay. You have to specify the specific ISO base image that you want to operate from. And so that creates some interesting challenges. So if you wanted to create something for latest or their tests or dev branches, you'd have to clone that boot environment and then operate it from there.
Modify it accordingly.
Yeah. I must have broken something on that one. Oh well.
And then and then this is booting the OS. There was the RKS or the RK, whatever their Kubernetes piece was. So there was a workflow that would also install the actual admin server, but a separate one. Yeah. So Rob, you're really, really quiet. So, okay.
But
thank you.
Yeah. So there's additional stages that that we've added. So I was just talking about the Rancher OS ones, but there's also a Rancher install, which is a kind of a secondary thing that runs on a system that will install Rancher. Now you need to distinguish between Rancher OS and Rancher. Rancher OS is just the operating system that's running. Rancher is a separate program that runs as a set of containers, usually inside of Kubernetes, but that can manage installing and setting up Kubernetes and running services inside of Kubernetes and such. The Rancher install stage allows you to install that server as a service on a system in a dev mode, right? Or you can point to an existing Rancher if you wanted to. And then there's a stage called Rancher join, which basically joins that node into that Rancher service based upon specifying a set of profiles with some various parameters, how you access the Rancher admin. And then that will add that node into the Rancher service. Okay. So again, that's more stuff to play with and look at. The parameters are defined in the Rancher space. So you can notice the distinguish between Rancher OS and Rancher. So we actually allow you to inject a network template. For example, well, the docs actually, well, there's an example template that lets you inject things like bonding and VLANing and other stuff so that Rancher can run on a more complex network template. So you can inject that. Same thing with a state template. This allows you to inject where the disks should be used and stored if you want something other than just the default And then these are the actual Rancher IP name for controlling Rancher. Setting these on the node when you want to join it to Rancher will actually tell you which cluster to join inside of Rancher, the admin password so that you can join yourself to, and then what roles you want that node to play inside the Rancher cluster, whether it should be etcd, control plane, or node. You can specify all three. It's a list. And then the actual server IP of the Rancher. And the idea is that you would use that Rancher stage to build up your Rancher node. You would log into it to create a cluster name, and then you would go assign these parameters to the, either through a profile or whatever, to the nodes you wanted to join Rancher. Like I said, it's entirely play. It was a quick thing to see if that would kind of function, and it kind of does. But it's also very, it's not intended for production. It's more of a dev test environment. Rancher, if you actually go look at their environments, they have a much richer Rancher setup and expectation. And for a lot of their deployments, they have you run the Rancher server on a 3-node cluster, and then you point all of your other systems at it, and that builds its own Kubernetes cluster. And the intent was more just to test that flow so that really most customers or people we've talked to have their own Rancher cluster already and wanted to dynamically add new nodes to these clusters or bring up new clusters. And so really the use case was more around giving you the ability to automatically join these things into Rancher clusters.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, so that's so like with Crib, we're actually building the control plane, but for the Rancher case, the control plane here is really just for test.
That's right.
Whereas, right, the expectation is you would already have a Rancher control plane somewhere, and you're just saying,
yeah,
hey, join it.
Or you could use those as the starting point, but that's where it goes.
Yeah, and it's a commercial thing, so we're expecting that somebody who cares about that is going to be either becoming a Racken Enterprise customer and or a probably a Rancher Enterprise customer too.
Yep. So there you go.
Cool.
Okay, awesome. Where'd my control? There we go. Yeah, Zoom, you suck.
Is my sound better, Greg, by the way?
That's better, yeah.
Okay, I tried to boost it.
Okay, so up next, we're going to talk about just sort of a general topic, which is a number of usability improvements and ease of use changes in a couple of areas of the product space. One, stock workflows with bootstrapping for Streamline. This ties in a little bit with preferences as well. In the background, Racken has been working really hard on a refactor of the portal, and so we have a number of very large pieces finished and done there. There's still a fair bit more to do, and we'll be looking for some brave souls to start hammering on the tip UX portal stuff. With that, I'm going to hand over the reins to Rob. Rob, I'll let you talk about the Bootstrap streamlining and show us some of the UX refactoring work that you and
Sure.
Isaac have been working on.
Happy to. And then I was thinking that, did you want to show command line for how the catalog stuff would work? Or?
Yeah, I was going to do catalog stuff next after that and let Greg, I think I'll have you show the catalog stuff, or Rob, either one of you two, if you want to show that.
I can set up the catalog a little bit, and then there's some CLI pieces that will be helpful. Some of them have surfaced in community, but we actually just went a bit further.
Okay, then go ahead and intro the catalog improvements then for us to show us what the catalog is, and then we can go into the UX and Bootstrap streamlining.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, it's really tangled together. Boy, so one of the things that you'll have noticed we've been adding, this came up in community about 2 weeks ago. We added some like shortening things for to access items out of the catalog. So you could say api.racken.io/catalog and then name things in the catalog. We actually took a step further, and then if you check repo.racken.io, it actually it's going to render horribly here. I don't have my JSON profile.
Rob, I don't think you're sharing. Are you sharing? Oh, there you are. Sorry. Zoom is hiding my windows on me now.
Oh, okay. Hide this junk. Thank you. That's crazy. All right. It really wants to show me some ads. Oh, God. Sorry. It attacked me. Yay. So what we've done is we've taken there's a couple of things that conspired to make this possible, but the content and plugins are now in a single catalog, and the way we've been changing licensing for a lot of the plugins means that you can download any plugin and use it. You just have to activate a license. And then we have a 10 machine license. So if you activate a general 10 machine trial license, then any of these plugins can be downloaded and installed on the system. And so some of the UX stuff is to streamline that process too. But basically that meant that we could put everything into a single catalog. So content and plugins are available. And then we'll show you some CLI tricks that we've been using to make this accessible from the CLI. So you can CLI a catalog request. The catalog items include their source location. And so you'd be able to, from that command, just like we do with bootems, where you can say bootem install this ISO, you can do that with content. Greg will show that stuff from the CLI.
So one of the really nice capabilities from that is, from an automation perspective, is you can grab the catalog. You don't need to know what the URL locations are for the actual plugin or content piece. You can pull that out of your JSON blob and then dynamically grab your content or plugin appropriately based on the information in the catalog.
Right, and there's some interesting things that are coming down the pipe that are enabled by this change. This is sort of a first step type of change for getting the catalog out there. But that overall, that means that there's fewer round trips to the APIs in the UX, and then all that information is available to make CLI decisions and do CI/CD that just pulls stuff in. So that's a sort of a background change that enabled that. At the same time, we've been working on, I'm playing with the license generation stuff. So
hold on the catalog stuff. Could you bring it up again real quick, please? I wanted to touch on one important note is genericizing, if you will, stable tip and version information. So in this example, action proxy-stable is the current released stable version, and then action-proxy-tip would be the current tip version. And then there's also subsequently action-proxy-v240 in this case. So you can pull a specific version or get the source for a specific version or stable or tip appropriately. And we're tracking 3 versions, I believe. Is that correct? In the catalog, so the catalog doesn't grow to be millions of entries long ultimately.
Yeah, it's at most 3 back. Eventually, right now, it creates some phantom versions, we're working on that. So sometimes there's if you look at some of the experimental items that are brand new, it'll look like they may have some things in the past, but they don't really.
They don't. Okay. So, in a couple of releases, that won't be a problem.
That's right. So, but there's some changes coming on that side too that'll make that a little cleaner. But yeah, we're going to limit the back choices to just a few.
Right. And we're not maintaining legacy versions for you for tip content. So you're only going to get the pointer to the current tip if you're one of the brave who rides the tip from that perspective. But this is super handy. It really makes it easier to find and list the data that we have, and makes the content much more accessible. at the same time, the UX has been, so we wanted to really improve our test coverage in the UX, and so we use that action as so we're trying to reduce times where we make a small change to the UX and it breaks things. If you're using stable, you're not going to see any of this at all. You have to be in the tip version of the system to see any of that type of problem, because the tip is where the latest UX goes. And this meeting is effectively our launch for saying, hey, it's safe to use the tip. Safe-ish, mostly safe to use the UX and tip. There is no back-end change. So the way we support the UX across multiple versions, going all the way back to .8. And so, you know, it doesn't matter what version of DRP you're using, the UX will work. It might modify its behavior a little bit. But if you want to try new features and play with new things, then this is the place to go and do it. But the CI/CD system should make us, you know, even more reliable and faster. And then as part of that change, we refactored a lot of things behind the covers. Hopefully you won't see too many glaring changes in the UX. I'll tour you through a couple of them. And a lot of them come in on trying to make the license pieces easier to use. So we're switching licenses will actually be versioned so that you can know if your license needs to be updated. One of the things that we added was endpoints. So when you get a license, you get it locked to an endpoint. So you'll have a generate button, you'll generate that, but you don't have to regenerate licenses every time you think you're out of sync. You can just download and install that license. So if we have a lot of people in community who are constantly updating their blowing away their system and then resetting it. You don't have to regenerate a new license to do that. You'll be able to just reinstall the existing license from that perspective. And it's going to give you a lot more specific information. This was confusing people at times to tell them what was wrong. So if I'm in multiple orgs, it'll actually distinguish between the orgs that you're in and give you some other feedback. And why is it giving me a catalog issue? The other thing that, make that a little bigger. So that's part of this big change. A lot of what we're trying to do is just make it easier to get content and to give people better feedback about the content. So now when the system loads, it's going to go through that content catalog and compare your versions of things, including DRP itself. And I'll let Greg talk about DRP from a versioning perspective, but it's going to list out the versions that you have available and then let you know if there are upgrades or changes or new content available. So in this case, the green with the circle would indicate that task library is fine, but one of the ones with an arrow is going to be an indication that, here's a really good example. I have agent installed here and I was on the 64 tip. There's now a 108 tip. And so it's giving me an option it's telling me, hey, you should go upgrade that. And for some reason, there's a couple, I gotta review why I'm getting false positives for that.
That's the ish part.
That's the ish, yeah. And there's, I don't know, I'll have to see what's going on. And then that actually translates into a vastly changed catalog page. So if you're used to the old UX, we were presenting content and plugins as two things. And then if you wanted ones that you didn't have, you had to navigate into this sort of catalog that required a whole bunch of stepping and navigation. And that was confusing people. So that is gone. Instead, basically, when you download the system, you're going to get the full catalog. So you can see the version of the catalog you're attached to. And then from there, it's going to show you items that you have installed. So these are all the installed items. So if I hide the catalog, here's all my installed pieces. I'll still know if I'm going to upgrade them or change them. So if I wanted to switch to a stable the tip version of the install library, that's the same as I've got. If I wanted to go back to stable, I could just install stable. It would give me an update that I added it. the greens are going to tell you that you're on your current, greens are going to be that your current, yellow is going to be there's an upgrade available, and then the darker, we're trying not to have too many colors or jarring things, but the darker colors are tip. So if you're on tip, you're going to see all the colors is more rich, more saturated. And then the way we have so much content in the system that as things go, wow, things got busted. Oh, I'm hiding it. So because there were so many things in the catalog, we added some tags so that you can filter out content that you're not interested in. In this case, like you could look at just the Kubernetes add-on pieces. You could look at just the enterprise capability, the hardware pieces or enterprise pieces, and so pick the content you want from a filter perspective. And of course, you can still look at some of the things that you can't change, like the backing store where we store the read-write, the writable data. So all that, it makes it super easy. And then the goal here is that just if you want something to play with, right, you shouldn't care if it's a plugin or content. You should be able to say, oh, I want to look at FileBeat. You should be able to just click download and get it. If you want to see the docs, then we're going to provide a link to the docs. I clicked the wrong thing. Or if you wanted to see plugins, this would download a plug. This is a content pack. So all of it, if you click on these links, it'll actually download the source. So because it's all out in S3 repos based on the catalog. So that's a lot of that. And then one of the other things that we did in this upcoming version is that all of these pieces, since they come from different places, what's a good example? Burn-in. It'll actually tell you on the screen if you have the latest version. If you have an older version, it'll just tell you that it's read-only. But if you have the upcoming release or tip, it'll tell you that layer, what the name of that layer is. So at any piece of content that you look at, you'd be able to come back and say, oh, okay, this thing is from the burn-in catalog item. And as a reminder, plugins and content packs both bring in content. So it's very common for us to have a plugin like the Packet Console that comes from a plugin, even though there's a whole bunch of content affiliated with that. That's pretty common. So I know, especially for systems where you start getting a lot of things like params, we have 131 in the system. You might not know where that content layer came from, and this will help you find things in the reverse direction. Yeah.
And I think that there'll probably be some upcoming features in the UX and portal for being able to sort of group and filter things. You know, I want to only see the task library related params, for example. There's some potential opportunities to do some interesting visualization and help in that respect.
Actually, Rob, can you go to filter?
Yep.
Type task dash, see bundle?
Yep.
Type task dash library.
Ah, there, we do have it in now.
And apply.
There we go. Done deal.
Didn't work. It didn't work.
Didn't work, but
no, that's because I have a known bug. I should have said something. I have a known bug on this.
Okay, so it's called.
It will work.
It's called bundle in the object. So sorry.
It works ish.
Well, so yeah, so I need that's a known issue. Damn, I was hoping to keep that secret. But what I'm planning to do is add, since filters get saved. What I'm expecting to do is not only add that and add the ability to do some custom ones. Once you've done that, you'll get a pull down here that lets you pick the filter. So if you wanted to filter based on task library, you could just pick it here. Pagination got reworked, although I think there's 1 or 2 bugs filed against it still. This is the page where you're going to see it the most, so you can jump pages and stuff like that. There's a lot of subtle changes. One of the biggest speed improvements was this info screen is much faster. Same with actually all the screens. Anytime you jump through a screen, that's a lot of data. You'll see big performance improvements because we parallelized the load times instead of they were serial before. So the more complex screens, the more improvement you'll see in load performance and timing and things like that. But other, you know, except for exposing some more data, you won't see a lot of extra stuff. There's definitely things that are coming in the next release that we haven't had time to go through that are also exposed in the UX. So I'm waiting until the features are discussed. Trying to think if there's something. Oh, and then depending on how you feel about bulk actions UX, this has been consolidated a little bit. So you'll see we're trying to manage the real estate a little bit more carefully. So workflows, profiles, and stages have their own tabs, but because runnable and actions are your workflows are often click, 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 then those are all three available. That was the other major UX change, I think, for this. Oh, okay, yeah. And for the catalog, there's some regressions that may or may not come back. There's the diff and preview is no longer in, but I'm expecting that to come back in time. And there's no way to just upload things from here anymore. We assume that if you're going to be uploading directly, you are going to use the CLI. And based on what we see in community, that seems like the right balance, instead of trying to make a whole bunch of drag and drop stuff out of the catalog. Anything else that I should show on this?
I think you touched on most of the big things. You were going to also cover base workflows and in community, the base workflows.
Base workflows. Oh, right. I'm trying to think of where I can show that. So I'll talk about it more. So if you go to the quick start, that's not what I want to show. So one of the things that we're trying to do is streamline the steps that it takes to do the installation. And the catalog enables us to make some improvements here. Yay, this actually has the current one. So in the past, we had not put workflows into the content packs because we expect workflows to be something that people have to define for themselves. We got to a point where having a basic discover that's basically discover and sledgehammer wait was consistent enough that we felt that we could add it. So the flow in the UX, or in the quick start guide now says you need sledgehammer, and then if you get if you've already gotten the base community content, then we can install discover based on sledgehammer being there. There's a chicken and the egg problem, right? Prefs will not allow you to assign a workflow
that doesn't exist.
That isn't valid.
Or references items that don't exist, I should say.
Right. So by putting discover base in the system, then I can show it to you. Workflows, discover base. Oh, this one doesn't have it. Hold on a second. And this will fail potentially because I have discover base defined. Yeah. Sorry. We're trying to get good feedback out of these systems too. Let's see how it does. Yay. I have to figure out why it didn't give me feedback. So anyway, so discover base has just discover and sledgehammer wait. The reason why that's important is that then lets us set the preferences for new users in the default command line. And then from there, if you then add the new tip library, task library, we have CentOS base and Ubuntu base. So this will get simplified. Greg will show you how in a moment. Then you can install the OSs, and at that point you could install any of Sledgehammer and then go through a full CentOS or Sledgehammer just by picking the right workflows. And that eliminates basically most of the install process. At that point, the only thing left for a new user is to set a subnet and boot a machine. There is no other, and we can't reasonably set subnets for people. They have to do that. But the idea here is that because by having the catalog and things like that available in this straightforward of a way, it becomes a even less fumbling around for things and fewer steps for you to get a system running. All right. That help? Does that explain it?
Yep.
Awesome.
Perfect. All right. That sort of wraps up the, I don't want to say fun bits. The more interesting bits, the Rancher live deployment, ease of use improvements with bootstrapping, streamline, catalog improvements, and the UX refactor. When it comes to the UX refactor, we'd really encourage everybody to start using tip.rackend.io. If you're so inclined and you're not, hot and heavy with production operations issues and have the time to explore, and when you bump into the ish side of things, please drop us an issue or drop us a note in Pound Community. We're looking to get as much coverage and feedback on the changes in the portal, and we know there are a few rough edges, as we saw here today, that we're working on. There was a lot of very significant refactoring under the hood to try and clean things up, make things faster, and streamline things. So there are going to be a few of those ish edges somewhere.
Every API call changed.
Yep. So let's open up to community first. So anybody on community have questions, topics, thoughts, things you want to air with the Rackend team while we're here? I'm going to take that as a great big fat no. Then either that or, oh, nope, Chris is not typing, so no text in chat. So, all right, then we'll move on to Bug Scrub. And let me find my share and deal with my screen jumping all over the place when I Zoom share. And now I got to go reorient myself.
While you do that, I did have one comment that there's some things in the tip CLI that will interact with the catalog also. So if you want to catalog install, I think it just says what catalog : and then the item that'll automatically download the catalog. Or you have to set it. Yeah, you have to. You can override that with. I'll let people find. Just be aware that you can actually use. There's some CLI commands coming that'll interact with the catalog directly too. Right.
There we go.
You're muted. Nope, I'm not. All right.
Nope, you're not muted. Okay. So look forward to some CLI changes and enhancements to interact with the catalog. Yes, there we go. Oh, right. So this. Oh, that was my feature request. Haha. So yeah, this allows you to the CLI can now index the catalog and get stuff based on catalog : syntax to be able to get the latest stable and does that catalog, so IPMI-stable, IPMI-tip, etc. work also, Greg? For those of you that are following,
in fact, it's required
in text. Yeah, so because you didn't show it in the text. So DRP CLI plugin _ providers upload IPMI from catalog : IPMI-stable. So that would be the syntax there from the CLI to make it very easy to get whatever the IPMI stable version is currently without having to know that and let us index in the CLI the catalog directly. That was one of the cool feature bumps we got in right away from the catalog. Okay, all right, Bug Scrub. It has been a while since we've done this.
Yeah.
Well, we don't actually have a whole lot here. Yeah, I was going to go to the bottom. Restrict auto-generate tokens for machine operations.
Oh, you're right. You're all the way. Okay.
But
Yeah, the review.
Did you want to do the unreviewed ones first, or do you want to review the?
Yeah, the reviewed tag indicates we've looked at it once in the session.
Right.
Oh, when did those show up? Are we adding those?
Last time
We
we
had
did
those when we touched them.
All right.
we were doing it behind the scenes as you would discuss them. We were tagging them.
Well, that's just terrifying. All right, multi-arch DRP CLI JQ and add to helpers. So this is just a pretty minor change. Is we currently added JQ into the files, I think, so we can grab JQ for use in a lot of the workflows, and it's just a utility that's used pretty heavily. We currently only support Intel Linux JQ, I believe.
That is correct.
All right. So is somebody marking this reviewed in the back end while I'm doing this, or Greg?
I will. Okay.
Rob. Okay.
I will take the reviewed job.
But I think this is something we'd like to do. I don't think it's at the moment. We don't have any pressing issues. Nobody's been screaming and yelling and shouting for specifically alternate architecture versions, or
it's really only going to be an issue when we get to somebody seriously pushing ARM.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Required param on stage causes silent failure on stage run if param removed. This came in from community, from Maz and community. Let's see here.
I thought we fixed that as a bug, but
well, it's been a few months, so it's possible we fixed it.
Stage. Yeah. This is a problem in general, isn't it?
Yes.
Like for if you remove parameters from the system, but they're installed as something in stage, then you're going to have problems.
Yep. Yeah, because there can be a sort of a whole spider web of validation issues. We don't trigger a validation check against all the pieces and parts on sort of a cron run basis. That's only done at create time, I believe. We do a validation.
I think it'll do it on update. I think when you save.
It does. The issue here is that the parameter, in some regards, the parameter existed. It's that the param was removed from the machine when the machine was going to go through that stage. And so the rendering couldn't work correctly. So it wasn't showing anything.
Is this something where maybe just a little better error handling will help elucidate that, as opposed to trying to revalidate everything, which just gets into a sticky mess?
Yeah, it's the challenge, I think, for this one is that the validation is dependent upon the thing being rendered. So he had a stage that had a parameter, and that parameter went away, but that parameter went away in the context of the machine that was in that stage. So you can't do it at runtime, or sorry, you can't do it at like stage and upload or stage setting. It's entirely based upon when that machine enters that stage. And it actually can't even be done when you apply the workflow directly, because parameters can be added as side effects of previous stages.
Right.
So you can't even say like, hey, you just entered a workflow and this is going to blow up.
And we can change the workflow on the fly as well. So
that's right, and the stages and all that stuff. So most likely the best fix for this is to make sure that the machine picks up an error and gets marked as failed and that kind of stuff, if we can, when it actually goes to try and transition to the stage.
Right.
And I think
the job will fail, won't it?
I don't think it was the thing, is that it's kind of hung in this limbo state.
So this goes back to October. Didn't we do a whole bunch of template rendering improvements in
No,
this time zone? No.
Nope, not for this.
Nope. No. We did
That was
expose
before,
we exposed templates to be the rendered templates to be viewable from the job log and in the UX, which makes it possibly a bit easier to track down to find where the render failure occurred. But we didn't do any additional validation changing.
This strikes me as it's architecturally this would require early binding data that we don't have, and would potentially break the system if we did.
Yeah, so I think that at this point, probably just a better catch of the error and logging is sort of the best we can do. Greg, I'm thinking, and that's
right now. I suspect that's the case.
Yeah,
or the easiest. There's not without changing stuff. The direct use is we need to get better the errors better exposed so that the user can see that the machine is having issues because it's missing a parameter.
Okay, so machine DRPC line machines process jobs, reestablish connection on IP change from YT John and community. If you create, let's see, what else? Do we have any more comments around this? Reservation for sledgehammer boot amp machine or otherwise cause the IP address to change. DRPC line machine process jobs will drop its WebSocket connection to the DRP server. No longer able to. WebSocket has dropped connection and reestablished connection. I think, Greg, you talked with John about this.
So we thought, yeah, so couple things. The CLI attempts to do the reconnects, but there are some issues around IP address changing. And I think in this case, the IP changed, so it changed the source, which changed how we were supposed to get to DRP itself. So there's some extra math that goes with that. And so YT John's suggestion was to look at modifying the DHCP server hook to cause it to restart the client so it would re-get the DRP CLI, the API IP. But I still need to think about that. It is a rare condition that he was hitting because I think he was changing not only the IP, but also the network that he was getting to. So there was, it wasn't just as simple as, hey, we lost connection, because we already test and can handle process jobs losing connection to the machine and picking it up and starting over. And in his case, it was the explicit changing of the IP and potentially the routable path from DRP CLI to DRP. And
yeah,
so there's
a lot of underlying
there's
changes.
some extra stuff that may have to change in that case, right? Because in his case, he wanted to in his example, he reruns the control sh script, which goes and gets some of the information again that process jobs needs to do its job. So it's not as clean cut, and so as just saying, hey, retry stuff, because we already do that.
Wouldn't System D catch this, or
no? Not that way.
A DRP panic and restart.
Well, because well, two sets of things.
It's okay. I don't need it. I don't need an answer.
Never mind.
No is sufficient.
So just move on.
Okay. Moving on. Moving on. Ubuntu 16.04, 18.04 ISO has nested install folder after it's exploded to disk. Yes, that's
true. Sadly, that is the Ubuntu world, as far as I can tell.
So install.
This is a documentation type issue.
Yeah, I think that's just the way Ubuntu does it.
Well, it's a little combination. We put it in place.
We put it in install, and then they had it. Yeah.
So it's the ISO itself doesn't, but usually if you're trying to use the ISO through network installs, you often need it. But and so I'm not sure. I was hoping that. Yeah, he's doing custom work. He didn't tell me what custom work was, so I don't know. In general, it was a legacy thing. We don't necessarily have to have it anymore, but okay.
So the actual install directory that we injected into may potentially be able to go away, but it touches a lot of things. Not sure.
Yeah. And so it's one of those. I don't want to touch something that kind of has just been working unless I understand what it's breaking on his side, and he didn't give me any more information. So I was like, no, okay.
Okay, so looking for some more info from him. Otherwise, we're leaving it.
Yeah, I'd love to know what custom he's doing so that we can encompass it. But
I'll make a note.
Okay.
Yeah. This is just a straightforward request.
I'm going to close. I'm going to close that last one, by the way.
I wouldn't close it yet. Just say we're looking for more information before we consider closing it as a not going to fix.
Okay.
We need to understand the use case a little better, if it's a real use case that is.
Yep. Okay.
Worth addressing.
Type ahead lists.
Yeah, this is a good request.
This is a very
bulk actions, good request.
All those fields, you just have to go find it in the drop down. And
yeah, I have to fix that anyway. So maybe I looked at it briefly and I haven't.
All right, we've got 3.5 minutes left and 2 items.
Ooh, let's do it.
Bulk actions, quick clear item button for workflow and stages. Currently, the workaround is use workflow reset stage in the dev library.
Yeah.
Rob, you noted that.
That's
no. That's not the same request. Gosh, darn it.
What?
Darn it.
Please add a button to quick clear and apply. So the idea is that if you want to reapply a workflow, you have to go and say unset and then set. And what he wants is one button that's reset to this.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with running a reset workflow. He wants to.
For his use case, it is. It's a development use case. He's building a workflow. He's testing it, and at the end of testing it, he wants to set it back.
No. He just wants a button to do it. He doesn't want any programmatic aspects of it. He just wants to say, instead of having to click this thing twice, of manually saying unset and
clear
then
item
the thread, he wants a button that's basically call the API with a clear and then call an API with a set. That's all he wants.
And do we want to have that?
Yeah, that's a different question. But it doesn't have anything to do with the workflow reset stage.
I talked to him on Slack when he was doing this, and I asked if this was for development, and he was like, "Yeah, it's a pain because in development, I get to workflow worked, and then I have to constantly click to reset it." And I'm like, "Yes, I added workflow reset for this development pattern."
Okay, I have other people who want that use case how I described it, without having to do any of that other crap.
I'm fine to add it.
Greg's work case is workflows clear item to clear the current workflow on a given machine and then go back and set it again to right?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
And the reason why that's tricky is it involves 2 posts.
I agree.
2 patches. It's not a problem. It just is a different operation than any of the other operations because it requires 2 round trips. But not hard to do, especially the new UX has room for more buttons. So
yeah,
I don't mind doing it now that I have room.
Adding the workflow reset, what does that do? Sets it to what?
It sets it to nothing. It clears it, which then forces the workflow to be recalculated. But what happens? So if you're in a mode where you're like, I want to reapply this workflow again, and it worked, you have to go to clear for it to recalculate the reset the pointer back. I mean, basically, we could just force the task counter back to 0, but that's bad.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. So I'll just make. I know exactly how to do this. It's just if we want that button.
Actually, that's an interesting thing.
So let's take those enhancements offline, because I think we're going to have a little bit more discussion than just a quick review. And we're at the top of the hour, and we have one more to discuss here.
I know you want to get it done.
No, this is good. We want to have this discussion, and it's a good set of usability enhancements. But right now is not the time to air it all out, I don't think.
Yeah, no. The reset is useful too, so that's good.
Yep.
The workflow reset.
All right, so
it's not hard. I can do it.
Just go ahead, Shane. Keep going.
Okay, so the last one to wrap up here: plugin publish events, original model included. This is a comment from you, Rob.
Yep. And we can take this one offline. So this is when a event comes through, when a plugin is capturing an event, you only get the changed object. So
no. Let's back up. The big issue is that when you do receive an event for an update operation, you don't know what the original model was, so you can't tell what changed. So the request of this has nothing to do with the plugin publish event. It has to do with the event itself being published, that the update event does not contain enough information to generate a difference for what changed.
I'm fixing the title.
And so the real request is, can update events please include the original model along with the changed model?
I'm updating the copy to fix that. You see it. You see me making this.
Yep, got it. Perfect. All right, so that's actually the last of the items to review in Bug Scrub. We probably need to go back and visit some of these older ones and decide whether we're keeping them or going to work on them, where they fall in things. In the meantime, that is a wrap up for v33, February, whatever the heck today is, 12th. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Everybody in the community, appreciate your participation. Look forward to seeing you guys in 2 weeks. We're going to try and get a little bit better at publishing meetup agendas in advance. Hopefully, it'll help generate some more interest in it. In the meantime, if anyone in the community has specific topics that they would like to propose for Meetup, or if you have any work around digital rebar provision that you're doing that you'd like to show in the community, please touch base with us, because I'd love to highlight any of the things you're doing in community. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday.